completion, and more. Now let's turn a moment to FileMaker WebDirect. Now in FileMaker 13, we introduced innovative new technology called FileMaker WebDirect. And this technology delivers the full interactivity and power of the FileMaker desktop solutions, but running in a browser. With FileMaker WebDirect, you can deliver the next generation web solution even if you've never deployed any web application before, simply by using the same skills that you've already acquired for building desktop or iOS FileMaker solutions. Now, the first version of FileMaker WebDirect was aimed at browsers running on desktops. Now in FileMaker 14, we have further refined the technology and are extending it to support mobile tablets and a touch interface. And subsequently, we've also made the technology faster. Existing users will find that FileMaker WebDirect is about 25% faster when opening most of their web layouts. So we've also made some enhancements to the design tools. You know, today's users have very different expectations of design. They want solutions that, like what they see on the app stores, and they expect applications to be great looking, uncluttered, and easy to use. And our customers want to create professional designs, but they're not necessarily professional designers. And in previous versions of FileMaker, we added things like ready-to-use themes and styles, as well as other rich design tools. And now in FileMaker 14, we help users go further with new design tool enhancements. For example, we've created an intelligent color palette that suggests a range of color options that's based on your current theme. We've allowed more control of the look of objects, even down to the details. For example, here we're showing how you can choose the color of the pop-up calendar icon. And we've added 140 professionally designed button icons, along with the ability to add your own custom icons to buttons. You know, today, many applications in the App Store and pages on the web have labels that show up inside fields. And this can really help simplify your layout or form design. And we now support in-field labels in FileMaker 14. And these can be added as strings directly in the inspector, or they can be defined via a calculation. Now, another common design element you see are navigation bars that stay fixed as you move around your application. Now, these are especially useful in limited screen real estate solutions that are common to mobile devices. And a navigation bar is built on two new features that are found in FileMaker 14, button bars and navigation parts. Also, there's a new FileMaker Launch Center that makes it easy to find and run your solutions. It provides an app-like interface with big, bold icons that are also touch-friendly. You can use icons that are supplied by FileMaker, or you can add your own custom icons to give your solutions a personalized look. Now, the Launch Center works across the entire platform, for Mac and Windows, for the iPad, the iPhone, and even in the browser with WebDirect, so that you have a one common look no matter how you access your solutions, no matter how they're deployed. So let's take a look at enhancements to FileMaker Go. In FileMaker 14, we help users take further control of their iPad and iPhone solutions. We start with a redesigned interface for the FileMaker Go client that was inspired by iOS 8 and improves productivity. And then we add new ways to control solutions on iOS. For example, you can lock specific screens into portrait or landscape views. You can now control when the keyboard displays or not pop it up when you don't want it, or display helpful information along with capturing signatures. Plus, we've added awesome, powerful new AV controls that Andy's going to demo in just a moment. We've also made enhancements to our server technology. Our customers increasingly use FileMaker Server to share their solutions. FileMaker 14 adds features that help their users stay connected and their data secure and available. Automatic Reconnect is a feature that was found in FileMaker Go and now has been added to FileMaker Pro. This means, for example, if you're on a laptop and the network drops, you're going between zones in a wireless network, FileMaker will automatically reconnect the server as soon as you're back connected, bringing you right back to where you were in the solution before the connection was lost. We've also added new tools that help server administrators keep their passwords secure and up to date. And finally, we added a new standby server capability aimed at the experienced administrators. The feature allows administrators to set up a second server on the same network that's constantly mirroring the primary server. If the primary server goes down, the administrator can issue some commands from the command line, and their users will be switched over to the standby server. So let's take a little bit closer look at this. So here you see a primary server and a standby server. And the standby server is getting pushed changes from the primary server as they occur, leveraging our progressive backup technology. So if the primary server fails for whatever reason, the standby server can be promoted to become the primary server, and it is up to date with everything that was on your primary server. To promote the standby server, you simply type a command, and then you go to the standby server and open your file. So here's an example of the command line to evoke the standby server. And so let's take a look at what does the user see. Well, today, if there's a problem with server, your users get a message like this. With FileMaker 14, users will experience something like this. A simple dialog box, they can reconnect, and they're back online. So instead of hours of recovery potentially from a server problem, you and your users can be running again within minutes. So enough of the slideware at this point. I'm going to hand it over to Andrew Lucades, and he's going to give you a demo of FileMaker 14. So with that, Andy.
Thank you, Rick, and good morning, everyone. It's good to be here with everybody, and we'll take about 20 minutes or so and get a look at some of the features that Rick has been talking about. Starting at the start, I will launch FileMaker Pro 14 or Pro Advanced 14 on my desktop, but I will be using today FileMaker Server 14, FileMaker Go 14, and FileMaker WebDirect 14, and you'll see how well all of these sort of play together and integrate together, and how consistent the platform has really become across all the variety of OS platforms for delivery. So starting at the start again, we have the new Launch Center in FileMaker 14. This is the new UI for accessing files that you want to use. You can see that it's very visual, it's very iconic. The graphic icons themselves can be customized for any given file. If you simply go to the File Options dialog for that given file, and the icons will stay and persist with the file. So if you move it from server to server, or you open it from WebDirect or the desktop or FileMaker Go, you always see its appropriately branded icon, which is just terrific. And there are a variety of ways to view the information. You can have a list view as well as the grid view for your data. You can explicitly show just favorites if you are in an environment with lots of FileMaker databases and you want to just get to the ones you use often. You can isolate just those favorites. And of course, you can look for hosts on your network that may be available to you, and even there you can drill down and just see favorites that you care about on your given hosts. So there's a variety of views here, and it's very sort of intuitive. And of course, you can search for things as well. If I want to look for my approvals database, I can just type in here and filter the list and get to the one I want. So we think this will be great for new users getting accustomed to the environment. Now, of course, in previous versions, you could create new files from starter solutions, from existing solutions, or just new blank files. Of course, you can still do that here, and you can browse the network to get to hosts and add them into the dialog as well. So I'll start today by opening the approvals database. This is being hosted on my FileMaker Server 14, so I'm running in a multi-user mode here. And this particular file, if I can take a second just to describe the use case, is predicated to be a simple approvals system where for a media agency, assets like images or videos can be submitted and allow for a variety of people to look at them to approve them or not. Now I'm looking at a pretty straightforward list view here with some icons, but you can see the multiple rows, and there's nothing about this user interface that should look surprising. It's something that we could achieve in FileMaker 13 or in prior versions. But I will suggest that there is a new navigation part being used at the top of my window here. And in addition, we have the new button bar object being used on this particular layout. Right? And the button bar object itself is very versatile. It's really about ease of use and quickness in development, and I'll show that to you in just a moment as we'll build one. And it can be used for navigation. That's its sort of primary use case. But it can also be used for other things. For instance, if I drill down on one of these records, you can see here's another instance of the button bar, and this gives me sort of a toggle switch, if you will, or two buttons for which I can choose to say approve maybe this particular ad print campaign here. And I can put a comment in here. Notice, as I'm looking at the comments field that has appeared, that there is inline or placeholder text. It says type your comment here. And so to set this up, as Rick had mentioned, is a simple checkbox with the ability to type a string in the inspector in layout mode. And so it's an easy indicator. It could work in find mode and browse mode very easily. Again, this is something that programmers have been doing with FileMaker 13 and prior versions, but it often required some trickery, if you will, and layering of objects, and you have to use conditional formatting to show or hide the comment, and it may or may not work well in find mode. Now it's very, very simple to set up. It works great everywhere, and you should try applying it as soon as you get your hands on 14. So okay, we'll type our comment in here. I love this ad. The laces might be blown out. Have Barbara take a look, please. All right, so I put in my comment, and I can save that to the system. And you can see down here we're using slide objects and other controls that have been in FileMaker since version 13. And now Barbara, when she gets to come to the approval, can see my comment and act on that and make sure that the photo itself is in tip-top shape. Okay, so this is our solution, basic approval system here. I've now done that approval, so as I come back to my list view, I've only got 2 in the My Approvals category, if you will. And if I look at all, I can see all the ones that are in our database. But as I'm doing this, of course, I may have access to the database from FileMaker Go as a mobile user. And so what I'd like to do is show the same system, but running in FileMaker Go. And I'm going to attempt to do that today by using a technology and application called Reflector here so that I can show my iPad. And I'm going to use mirroring to bring that iPad up. And there we go, we can see it now. So you can see I've got a new icon for FileMaker Go 14. It is a new app available on the App Store. You can see I still have FileMaker Go 13 in my tray there. But I'll click on FileMaker Go 14 and we'll connect to that same file. But first, of course, you notice that the same launch center appears here. It is a little bit different because some of the user interface, the iOS and FileMaker Go story requires some differences, but you can see I have the ability to pin files at the top. You can actually select files and pin or unpin those files. I'm tapping on my grab bag right now, and I'm going to take away its pin and say done. And so I can make sure that my favorite files are always at the top of the list and available for me. I can view files in a list view. I can view them in grid view, similar to the desktop. I can look at hosts on my network and find them. And when I look at my hosts, see the files that are available on those given hosts. Of course, you can have files on your device as well, and I can see those. And you can see the custom icons, as I mentioned before, flow through from the desktop and through FileMaker Server to FileMaker Go as well. So let me tap on the approvals file, and let's log into that from FileMaker Go. Okay, of course, as I mentioned before, I approved one of those 3 records, and so now I only have 2 here. And you can see that I've got a layout that's dedicated for FileMaker Go. It's a little bit different than the one we looked at on the desktop. One of the primary differences, of course, is that we don't have a navigation bar at the top. And so what I'd like to do is fix that so we can take a look at how one creates that navigation bar. So I'm going to do that by hiding my iPad for a moment. And I'm going to go into my FileMaker Pro Advanced into layout mode. And let's go look for that approvals layout for the tablet. So here I've got an approvals layout for the tablet. And we can see, here's the layout I'm seeing on my iPad. And I'd like to add that button bar. Before I do, I will point out that the top part of the layout is a navigation part. You can see over here on the left-hand side, it says top navigation. It's not a header part. Now, it does look an awful lot like a header part, and it kind of acts like one. It stays at the top of the screen. And if I go back to browse mode for a second, if I were to scroll here, have more records, you would see that obviously it would stay fixed, much like a header part. However, there are some differences. Notably, when I zoom, you notice that the header part itself does not change or zoom itself. It stays fixed. And that's intentional. It may seem a little strange on the desktop, but on a mobile device, it makes perfect sense. If I were to go to the mobile device and I want to zoom the content area of my layout, I don't necessarily want the active navigation area to change. So this is by intent. This is what the navigation part is all about. It's for allowing you to build navigation at the top of the screen, or I should point out, you can have a bottom navigation bar as well, so you can create a button tray that's easily accessible by thumbs on an iPad or on your iPhone. Okay, so in that part, I'd like to add the new FileMaker button bar. Now, in prior versions of FileMaker, I could create navigation with standard buttons. So you come in, you draw a button, and maybe you put the name for it. This will be my approvals or something. And the UI here is a little bit updated in FileMaker 14, but the basic mechanism is the same. I'd want to place that button. I might duplicate it. I'd move it somewhere else. I would change the name of it. I'd try and use my alignment tools to get them aligned just so. I probably would want to use a FileMaker theme so that I could express where those should be put. So I might come in here and style those buttons, and we'll come in here and see if we can find one that matches, right? But there's a lot of moving parts here to get it just right. And so that's why in FileMaker 14 we now have the new the new button bar object. So you can see it up here at the top of my screen, right next to the button objects. And I could put that control in my layout and just draw a rectangle here. And you can see it automatically creates a 3-segment button bar. And that's by default. Of course, you can change the number of segments that exist in a button bar. I simply come down here and make fewer or more segments in my button bar. And if I go back to my first one here, maybe I want to add some things like my approvals, give it a name. And I'll go to the next segment. Let's call this one all approvals. And my third segment, I'll actually add a segment that wasn't on my desktop. I'm going to call it projects and name that one. Okay, so you can see I've quickly got those names set up and ready to go. And if I've made a mistake, like maybe this button bar, it looks like it's the right size, but if it were a little bit too tall, I can easily adjust the size of it. I can easily adjust the size of it horizontally as well, and it automatically proportionally scales all the other segments so that things just line up perfectly. It's just quick and simple. If I double click on these as well, I can look at other options. Like notice I can have the buttons themselves lined up vertically as well as horizontally. So if I'd prefer to have a vertical bar of buttons on the left-hand side of my layout for navigation, I could do that. I can also add icons. I can have icons expressed by themselves or maybe with the text. And so here I'm going to add space for icons on each of the buttons. Now, of course, when I want to add an icon, you'll see that the dialog here expands. And Rick had mentioned in the slides we were looking at before that we have 140 professionally designed icons built into the application now. So with every file, you get an automatic library of these icons to choose from. And so it's very simple. I can go into the segment, like my approvals over here. Maybe I want to use an inbox icon for that. For all approvals, maybe we'll use a list view, maybe this one. And for projects, I could find something else in here that I like, I'm sure. But I could also add my own. So this library is extensible for this particular file. I can simply use the plus icon down here on the bottom. I'll go out to my desktop, and it turns out that somewhere in here I have, here's a PNG file that I could bring in as an icon. It's colorful. And so let's go ahead and insert that. So I'll do that, and you can see that that works just perfectly. Now I should point out while I'm here that you can also add, in addition to PNGs, SVG type icons. And I'll go ahead and insert one of those because in this case I think it matches better the theme, if you will, of the icons that are here. And I should also point out that PNGs are icons that will come with their own color definitions, so they can't be changed by FileMaker. However, the SVG, or Scalable Vector Graphics format, is a simple text format that you can actually present so that it doesn't have its own color or styling information. And if you do that, FileMaker will actually allow its themes to adjust this. You can change the color of the icon dynamically with themes and styles, just like you can with other stylable elements through the inspector, which is awesome. So, okay, I've got these 3 buttons. They're basically set up and ready to go. I'll go ahead and do a browse mode for a moment just to commit my changes to this layout. And let's go back to my iPad. And sure enough, you can see that those buttons are here ready to go. Now, of course, they're not doing anything yet because I haven't added any actions to those buttons. So let me do that briefly. I'm going to go back to FileMaker on the desktop. Actually, I'll hide my iPad. And we'll look at this in layout mode again. And I'll double click once more on these icons. Now, I'll point out as well, while I'm here, actually, because I neglected to do so before, but when I come to this layout the first time, maybe I will always come and look at my approvals on this layout. There is an option here called Active Segment, where I can make that the active segment. It will be highlighted when I get here. In this case, I'm going to add an action. I'll do that for the Projects button here. And for the Projects button down here at the bottom, you can see there are 2 options for adding actions. One is to do a single step, one is to perform a multi-step script. This is something you can do in prior versions of FileMaker, but we just sort of show this here because we have a new user interface for how we apply these scripts. And this is our first introduction to the script workspace that Rick mentioned before. Now, in this case, I'm adding a single step action to this button, so I won't actually have a bunch of script steps here, but I have the ability to select from all the available script steps or menu commands that exist in FileMaker and use those and attach those to this button. Now, of course, there are a lot of them. And so it may help, particularly if I'm a new user, to be able to search through here. So I want this button to navigate from the layout I'm on to a projects layout. So I may want to actually, if I know the terminology layout, come in here and filter by the word layout and look for a step such as go to layout. And notice that while I'm trying these out, I get down here on the bottom descriptions of the script steps. So I get a quick idea of what it does. In this case, switches to a specified layout. That appears to be what I want to do with this button. If I'm still not sure, there's even a help icon here that I can click on that gets me to the full rich FileMaker help system and immediately gives me example code as well as descriptions as to exactly what this script step does. But I'm just going to double click on this step to add it. And while I'm here, notice that the parameter for the script step is also selected, and I can easily click on it and make some selections here. Like for instance, we're going to go to our tablets layouts. We have a projects layout there. We'll go to that one and say OK. I've now built this script step. I can say OK and commit it. And if I save the layout, by simply going back to browse mode, now we can go back to our iPad and we can test whether or not it works. Sure enough, I tap on it, and there's my navigation, and it's fully functional. So that's how easy it is, of course, to apply some automation to your buttons on your layouts. And that's classic FileMaker, right? Everything I just did was point and click. So for a new user, for somebody that likes to drive from the mouse, you really can't make syntax mistakes. It's very easy to do, and you can build your automation in no time. Let's go back to the layout again. And what I'd like to do is do a little bit richer programming, if you will. So maybe on the navigation to that project's layout, I don't know if you noticed, but I've got some overdue tasks there, right? So I've got 3 tasks that are overdue. Maybe we have a business rule that I really would like to call those out when you navigate there. So if an employee gets to that layout and they're overdue tasks, we want a warning dialog that says, hey, you got some things you need to catch up on. Let's make sure to get on it. Okay, so let's do that by going back to FileMaker Pro Advanced again. Go into layout mode, and I'm going to go select that projects button, and I'll double click on it to bring up our heads up display here for button bar setup. And down here at the bottom where we have our action, I'm going to click on it. Now there was one button I didn't refer to here before, and that's this one down in the bottom corner called Convert to Script. I'm going to do this because this is pretty useful. If you build your basic layout and later you decide you want to add richer automation and richer scripts, you can simply click this button, and it takes this one-step script and converts it to a script that you can add multiple lines to. So for instance, I might want to call this my navigation button to projects script or something. Say OK. Now I'm going to save that into my database. It's now done and it's saved as a script. Now I went at this by creating a single step button and converting that to a script. But most often I think programmers, when they're doing heavy scripting, they're going to actually come to scripting by virtue of coming to the scripts menu and selecting script workspace, or you can see the keyboard shortcut there, Shift-Command-S. So this is what the full script workspace looks like. And you can see in this case that I've got a variety of things going on here. On the left-hand side of the screen, we have the scripts that are in my solution. So in prior versions of FileMaker, this would have been a separate window. Now it's immediately available here to allow me to navigate through my scripts and filter them. So I can find, by typing navigate or something, I can find the script that I just made. You might notice, of course, that there are folders, there are dividers that help you organize over here. Here's a folder called Scripts for Buttons. This is a folder that was automatically created by FileMaker, so that when it converted my button step into a script, it gets put here. So as a developer, I'll know where to go find these later. But I can also, of course, use my filter. Here it is. I've now got the script open, and it's ready for editing. In the middle, of course, is our script pane. And you can see that you can have multiple scripts open in a tabbed interface. You can take any of those scripts if you want, and with a simple right-click, you can open those to a new window. So if you do want to work on 2 scripts side by side, maybe copy some steps back and forth, you can easily do that as well. And what else? Let's see. Over here on the right, we have our third pane, which of course is the script steps that are available, again with the description on the bottom and the ability to filter for search. And as you get comfortable with scripting and you get more facile with the tool, you can actually hide the script steps on the right if you don't need them anymore. You can hide the script names themselves from the left-hand side if you don't need those anymore. So you can tune this interface to show exactly what you want and really maximize your workspace. There are some other options here, of course, the ability to add new scripts easily from this button in the upper right-hand corner, the ability to run a script, the ability to debug a script if you're using FileMaker Pro Advanced. And in the upper right, in addition to the pane controls I just showed you, you also have a control that allows you to look at a script and determine whether or not all the steps in that script are compatible with the various platforms for deployment, whether it be Macintosh, Windows, running on FileMaker Server, running on FileMaker Go, or through a web browser. So that's fantastic. All right. So what I really want to get to, though, is modifying the script and doing more with it. Now I mentioned that you could hide the step list on the right-hand side, but before, when I created my first step, I did it by double-clicking over here, right? Well, if you hide it, how do you script? Well, it turns out that in FileMaker 14, you can now do all of your scripting from the keyboard. So I can do some things like maybe I want to add some lines here. And so I'm hitting the carriage return key a couple times to give myself a little bit of space. And I'll just start, and notice, by the way, you can have empty lines and that there are line numbers there. So these are due for FileMaker developers, and we're really excited about it. I'm going to type the word if here. And you can see that there is type ahead that automatically gives me options that I may want to use. And you can notice that the if statement itself is already pre-selected. It's making its best guess that that's what I want. And if I hit the carriage return key or the enter key, you can see that it commits that if step. And not only that, but automatically adds an end if to close the statement for me, which is fantastic. Okay, so I'll keep typing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to search to see if there are any overdue project tasks in our projects table. So the first thing I need to do is find those project tasks or the overdue field in those tasks. So I'm going to start by typing the word project. And you can see again, type ahead shows me elements of my database, such as my fields and tables. So I can come down here and here's a projects table that's defined on my relationships graph. And now I see a list of fields that are available in that projects table. And I happen to know that I have a due date field in here, so I can type ahead to get to it, hit the enter key. Now I can continue with my expression here by simply saying, well, is the due date less than today? If it's less than today, I want to have a call out. So I put the less than symbol in there, and then what? How do I get today's date? I use a get function. So again, you can see the type ahead helping me here. I can, of course, type quite a lot here, but as I get to what I want, all the various get functions are available here, and there's my logic ready to go. I can hit function enter to commit that, so that's now ready to go, and I can add a new line and now decide what I want to do if this particular case is true. Okay, so what do I want to do? What I really want to do is show custom dialog. So I'm just typing show custom dialog. Again, notice that type ahead is coming to my help, if you will. I should point out as well that once you get comfortable with this, you can actually use keyboard shortcuts or acronyms for some of the common commands. For instance, show custom dialog, you can just simply type SCD. Or maybe use go to record request page in your scripts a fair amount, or go to related record, there's GTRR. And there's many, many more of these, and you'll figure these out as you go. Pretty much, typically the first characters of the command names strung together will give you an acronym, and you'll be off to the races. So there's show custom dialog. I am now going to hit the enter key to actually go to the parameters for show custom dialog. I'll just put a little alert title on my message and say you have, sorry, I'm really struggling to type it. You have overdue tasks. Please complete them first. Somewhat friendly message there. So I'll come down here and tab to the second button. I'll get rid of the cancel. And when I'm done, I'll simply hit my enter key to commit that, and I've now added this particular script step. So notice I'm not leaving the keyboard at all, ever here, right? Everything that I'm doing is from the keyboard. I've never gone to the mouse. Oops, didn't want to do that. Let's go back and add that step. Just getting ahead of myself. Show our custom dialog. I'll put my options back in. And we have overdue tasks. There we go. Get rid of that. All right. What I wanted to do down here is make some space so I can show that you can add comments in here. Alerts, folks that need to complete overdue tasks, right? And so everything that you do in the environment here can be driven from the keyboard. Almost everything, I should say. There are a few areas where you still need to go to the mouse, but very, very rarely. Now you'll also notice while I'm here that there is some color coding going on. My if statement, my end if are one color, my comment is another color. You actually have the ability to control the colors in your syntax. And you can actually change these colors if you want. For instance, I take incompatible script steps and I like to make those red so they really stick out at me, and I know if I'm running a script to be performed on server, that if I have a step in there that's not compatible, that I address that as well as I can. But script flow, disabled steps, incompatible steps, comments, tables and fields, all get their own coloration. You can customize these to your heart's content. So we think there's a lot of great things here. And the experience is very different from scripting in FileMaker 13 and prior versions, but it really changes, for me, the way I go about scripting, and I just love it. It's new, it's fresh, and it's fast. So give it a go. The first day or two that you use this new scripting model in FileMaker, things have moved around there in different places. It takes a little getting used to, but once you do, one of my markers for a very successful feature is that you just don't want to go backwards. And I feel that way very strongly about FileMaker 14. Okay, so I'm going to save the script and actually close the script workspace. Now, that script had already been applied to the button, so I should only have to go back to the browser mode to commit the change to it. Let's go back now and see if our iPad is still here. We'll go look at our projects, and sure enough, there's a script with the steps that I just added complete, and it's working just fine. So that's a little bit about layout design and adding scripting automation in FileMaker 14. There's a lot more, of course, that we could dig in on regarding the various script steps that are available in 14 and new functions and such. The calculation dialog, I should add, has also been updated and allows for type ahead and auto completions of functions and things as you build your calculation formula. So it's also just as exciting as the new script workspace. But what I'd like to do for a moment, while we're here looking at FileMaker Go, is just take a minute to look at the UI of FileMaker Go, because it itself has been updated. And you can see that we've moved around some of the options that are in FileMaker Go. For instance, the close file button is right here in the upper left-hand corner, along with some of the other file options. You notice as well that all of these options are here with nice, beautiful clickable buttons. They're very consistent graphically with iOS 8. And if you saw the keynote at WWDC yesterday, they're consistent with iOS 9. Right, so we've got a beautiful color palette here of iconography that really match the iOS theme, if you will. In user testing, we have found that a lot of users instantly gravitate to the upper right-hand corner to do things like searching. Right, it's the common location for search bars for Google searching or Spotlight searching or other things in apps. And so we've put our find controls up in the upper right-hand corner to match, and our users seem to really like that. I do have the ability to get to my file system, if you will, by simply tapping up at the header where I have the name of the file and its location. And down in the bottom right-hand corner where my thumb can easily get to it, I have the ability to add and delete and sort records quickly and easily, again with beautiful tappable areas, all very iOS 8 and 9 consistent. And you can see even for record navigation down in the bottom middle, I have this lovely control that allows me to control my found set, omit records, and move from record to record. So it's very complete, but a complete overhaul and really, really nice. I should add, of course, that oftentimes for our developers out there, when you build a solution for iOS, you may want to build it where our controls are not present. And you can hide them. Of course, we have the show hide custom or toolbar option, and you can hide it, you can lock it, and the users will never see these controls if you prefer that. And that allows you to give it the most app-like experience possible. You can also allow the user to simply make that decision themselves too. I'm going to use a 3-finger swipe and move my layout upwards. I did that kind of slowly so you might see it, but notice that the FileMaker Go user interface in this case just recedes and goes away. So I'll swipe back down with 3 fingers again, and I can bring it right back if I need. I'm going to go back to my approvals for 1 minute for my iPad, and I just want to show you 2 other quick things from the iPad, and then we'll look at FileMaker WebDirect. First of all, I'm going to tap on the running shoes and leave record there. And you may notice that on the screen, the iPad has rotated into a portrait mode. I'm going to have to ask you to take this on faith, but I'm still holding my iPad physically in the office where I'm working. I'm still holding it in landscape mode. But what is being demonstrated here is that as a developer, you now have the control on a layout-by-layout basis to actually lock the orientation to different orientations, to portrait mode, upside-down portrait mode, if you will, and the landscape modes as well. So you can decide if you have a layout that shouldn't be expressed in landscape, perhaps like this one, that the user can only see it in portrait mode. So there's hopefully many of the developers out there will find this useful. It's been a common request. What else is here? Let's go back to my list view again. I'm going to look at the running raw footage here. And I'm going to tap on the video for a moment, and we'll see how well this works over our web connection. So I'm going to play the video. And what I want to point out as this loads is that the video now can run inline with the record in the container field, and yet I can still have the ability to interact with the record. So for instance, I'm going to tap on the approve button in the upper right-hand corner, and then I'm going to tap into a type comment field. Again, notice the inline text there where it says type your comment here. Of course, inline text placeholders work just fine on FileMaker Go, just like you do on your desktop. But notice as well that when I typed in the field, the video stopped. So the video has paused itself, allowing me to make a comment at this particular mark. So maybe I love this segment, call that out. But I want to add a comment that shoes could be cleaner, right? Maybe for our ad, we really want them to look their best, right? So suggest they get on a less dirty road next time they look. There you go. So there's my comment, and I can now save it Watch what happens. The video just picks up where it was and continues about its merry way. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, if you're fast with the eyes there, that my comment is actually at the bottom. I'm playing the role of Sam Peterson here. And notice my comment is at the bottom, and it's timestamped at the 11-second mark in this video. So with scripting, there's a couple things that just happened there. As the video is running in line, I can actually have a script pause the video, allow me to interact with my data. As I type that comment and committed it, I also had a script reinitiate the video at the place it left off, and then also grab the timestamp or metadata out of the video and put it in my record. And you can see that work in reverse too. If I click on Barbara's comment there, you'll see that's the third clip. I click the play button. Notice it instantly jumps forward and starts playing exactly where her comment was. So this is a new feature. It is exclusive to FileMaker Go, much like signature capture, say, is exclusive to FileMaker Go today. But it's been a common request from a lot of our customers to allow folks to build interactive video applications with the FileMaker Go platform that can be used to maybe show out in the field catalogs to customers, maybe training videos to perhaps a sales force about products, and much, much more. And so we think there's a lot of great mobile use cases for interactive video and capturing data like this. And we can't wait to see what developers do with it. It's a very rich and powerful tool set. We can't possibly cover all the details of it today, but give it a go. I think you're going to love what you see. Okay, so that's a little bit about FileMaker Go. Some of the new features there. I'm going to actually dock my iPad back here on my desk. And what I'd like to do is switch for a moment to FileMaker WebDirect. So I'm going to do that by actually opening up a browser, in this case, Google Chrome. And I'm going to click on a link here for my FileMaker server so that I can look at the WebDirect homepage. You can see that the FileMaker WebDirect homepage is beautiful, and it's very consistent with the Launch Center on the desktop and on FileMaker Go. Once again, all the icons come through here in a grid view. Of course, I can see things in a list view. I can't store favorites here because we don't have a local application with which to store those for the user, but you can see that the rest of the data comes through just fine, and I can even filter things. So if I want to find my approvals databases, I can do that quickly and easily. All right, let's click on that approvals database and open it up. Now, in this case, I'm logging in from the web, so I'm playing the role of Bill, who's the client or customer of our advertising agency here. And here, Bill can see some of the ads that have been approved through and maybe require his final approval. But notice that the UI here is very similar to what we saw on the desktop and on FileMaker Go, that the navigation parts work fine, that the button bars are also working here just like we would expect. I can go look at a particular detail record here, and so here it is. I can maybe approve this or send it for review. Maybe Bill doesn't like this one, right? So notice his button bar works here just fine. Again, inline placeholder text works fine here. You can say, not sure about this one, looks a bit painful. And you can save that comment and send it back to the home office so that the folks at the advertising agency can see it. While I'm here, I should point out that the UI for FileMaker WebDirect has also gotten a major overhaul. For one, notice that there are nice, big, beautiful buttons that are very, very tappable, right? So this has been designed for mobility. It's been designed so that it will work just fine on things like tablet devices, right? Notice as well, I've got my record navigation here. I've got the same record navigation controls we saw on FileMaker Go, the ability to add, delete, and sort records, do finds, or enter quick finds. Let me do one thing quickly, just for fun. I'm going to actually size down my window a little bit, and you'll notice that my find option went away there. And my add and delete actually got compressed into one menu here. And actually that quick find also got compressed under this find icon. What's happening here is that the FileMaker WebDirect user interface itself is responsive. So if you cannot predict the size of the browser window or the size of device on which the browser window will be used, you can know that our user interface itself will be scalable, will automatically respond to that device and work just great. Of course, again, as a developer, you can control whether or not it appears at all. You can hide the toolbar and prevent users from noticing. So all of that leads to the notion that this should work well on the mobile browser. So let's take a look at that briefly. Let's go back to my iPad for a moment. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. And I'm going to actually transition away from FileMaker Go and open up Mobile Safari on my face here. And I'm going to go to my bookmarks. And let's go look for, finding the kids in front of you. Go here and back a little bit more. There we go. Bookmarks menu. Sorry, I can find it. So, there we go. Sorry, guys. FileMaker WebDirect. So here I have linked to the same FileMaker server through WebDirect that I did on the desktop. As you would expect, just like the desktop browser, I get to see the launch center just to see. You do to approvals and tap on that file. And it is launching it. Network's getting a little bit slow. Apologies. There we go. So here is my my database. Of course, my navigation bar here works fine. You can see, like I mentioned on the desktop, all the mobile UI works great here. It's very easy to tap and interact with, and it is responsive. So if I rotate my iPad here, you can see that the UI there compresses and automatically fits just perfectly. There's also, I should mention, a fairly rich integration with the iOS device here as I'm working even in the browser. So I can do things like come in here and add a new request. Maybe Bill wants to add a new campaign here. I'm going to tap up there in the title field, and we'll call this men's. Oops, the keyboard's not working. Let's get it going. There we go. So I'll put in men's running campaign. And we'll tap down here. Try something like this. I'll just put in a comment there. I'm going to tap in my container field. Now notice when I tap in the container field that I have the ability to choose a file on my device. In this case, I can either go to my photo library, look at the camera roll. There's an image that I like. I can upload that. And so through the mobile browser, not using FileMaker Go, but through the browser on the mobile device, I've now uploaded this image, and I can submit it to my FileMaker server. Of course, that would suggest that if I go back to even FileMaker Pro on my desktop, and I look up here, I see a message here from my advertising guy. There it is, right there. There's my record in the solution, ready for response and ready for approval. So all of these pieces really come together very tightly and very consistently. From desktop, FileMaker Go on an iOS device, to browsers on your desktop, or even on a mobile device, you get the same FileMaker experience, same rich set of features that all interact together. We think the new process of development, using the new script workspace, using the new calculation dialog, and all the features that we've added, it's really just nice. It's a great release in FileMaker 14. If you haven't had a chance to play with it yet, we hope that you will very, very soon. Please feel free to download it. We also, I guess I should mention, have the new FileMaker training series coming, as well as a lot of information on the community site so that you can get up and running. So having said all that, what I'd like to do is pass the ball back to Rick, and so we can continue on and talk about some of the requirements for running FileMaker 14.
Thank you, Andy. So just to recap, FileMaker 14, it's a major release, improves all parts of the FileMaker platform. It makes it easier and faster to build solutions and transform your business. And we can't wait to get 14 in the hands of more and more of our customers. We think this is a great release. So I'm going to talk a bit about the operating system requirements for FileMaker 14 so that you have an awareness there. So if we can go to the next slide. Okay, and so for FileMaker Pro and Pro Advanced on the Mac platform, OS 10 10.10 and OS 10 10.9 are supported. And on the Windows platform, Windows 7, 8, and 8.1, and you can see the varieties of the operating systems that are supported within those versions. For FileMaker Go, iOS devices with running iOS 8.1 or later, including iPad, iPad Mini, iPhone, and iPod Touch are supported. For FileMaker Server on the Mac platform, OS X 10.10 and 10.9. On the Windows side, Windows Server 2008 R2 Service Pack 1, and we've added support for Windows Server 2012 R2 Standard Edition, and you can see the update that supports. Regarding the browsers that are supported with FileMaker WebDirect on the desktop side, Safari 8 or later, Windows IE 10 and 11, and Chrome 38 or later. And because we've added mobile browser support, the mobile browsers that we support are Mobile Safari 8 or later on iOS 8.1, and Chrome 38 or later for Android 4.4 and greater. And finally, If you have a contract that's expired, or one that's coming up for renewal, or you'd like to renew the contract to ensure that you've got the latest version of FileMaker 14, then please contact your licensing person. The information is here on the number to call. And with that, we have time for some Q&A. And I think Andy and I will just round robin back and forth on these questions as we go through them. So I'll read them, and I'll take the first one, and then Andy, I'll hand you the second. We'll go from there. To remind you how to ask questions, go to the control panel, click on the question section, enter your question, and then click send, and it'll come directly to us. So the first question I have here is, does FileMaker 14 support FileMaker 12 databases? The answer is yes. It's the same file format, so that you will be able to open any .fmp12 file format with FileMaker 14, and it will open it. Of course, it might not necessarily have the new features in there, but yes, it'll support it. Andy, here's a question. Do I have to purchase a second license of FileMaker Server in order to use a standby server?
That's a good question, and the answer is actually no. We fully documented the process of installing and setting up the standby server configuration in the FileMaker Server Getting Started guide, so I definitely recommend that you take a look at it, but from a licensing standpoint, you only need one key to make all that work.
Okay, here's another question. Does FileMaker 14 server still allow custom web publishing with PHP? And the answer is yes, it certainly does, even though we continue to extend out the FileMaker WebDirect functionality and capability, and we will continue to do so. We do still support custom web publishing with PHP, as well as the XML format as well. Here's another question, Andy. Can FileMaker, or can FileMaker Pro 12 and FileMaker Pro 13 clients access FileMaker Server 14?
The answer there, of course, is yes. I think that's somewhat related to the answer that Rick gave there at the outset, that the file format has not changed. And so FileMaker 12 and 13 and 14 can all interact with the file at the same time. That said, I would add a caveat that recently, a few weeks back, we did update both the FileMaker 12 and 13 platforms with a critical security update. And FileMaker 14 applies essentially that same security update. So if you do want to mix and match them, you'll need to make sure that your 12 and 13 have been equally updated and apply that security update. But after that, it just works. I guess the additional caveat that bears mention, this is probably obvious, but I'll say it, is that if you use the new features of FileMaker 14, for instance, the new button bar or navigation parts, and you try to open those in a prior version of FileMaker, you probably won't like what you see. You'll get a box on the screen that says unknown object or something to that effect. Right? So if you're going to mix and match, it might be hard to use the new features. So we certainly recommend getting everybody up to new version as rapidly as possible. But that said, it will work.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Here's a question. Will the placeholder text be visible to people who use FileMaker Pro 13 or 12? This is related to the last couple of questions we answered, and the answer is no. The FileMaker Pro 13 or 12 are not aware of that new functionality, so they would not see the placeholder text. So something to be aware of in a mixed environment. If you're relying on placeholder text to give your users guidance on what is to be expected, just keep that in mind. You might want to also provide tooltips or something as well. And so here's the next question. So jumped out of my view for a second. For Andy, is navigation, I think no, I didn't do this. Navigation tools and buttons, are these supported in both Pro and the advanced version, or just advanced?
So the creation of the button bar object in the navigation part can be created from either Pro or Pro Advanced. And I should add maybe one thing I didn't demonstrate that bears mention is that in a button bar, you can have not only a string of buttons on the various segments of the bar, but you can also add popover buttons, and you can mix and match those. So I could have a button bar that has maybe 5 segments, 3 of which are buttons and 2 of which have popovers associated with them. And those work great together. So it's a very rich and powerful tool. Again, you can create it from both Pro and Pro Advanced. You can use it on Go, Pro, Pro Advanced, or on FileMaker WebDirect.
Thank you, Andy. Here's a couple of more questions for navbar, and I'll just answer both of these. The first is, for vertical navbar, is this usable only on the nav part? And no, not only can you make button bars either horizontal or vertical, and of course they have the characteristics of being in a navigation part, they do not have to be in a navigation part. You can use them independent of that. The other question is, how does the nav bar work on WebDirect? And as Andy showed at the end of the demo, certainly the nav part and the button bars translate all the way through to WebDirect. Essentially what you're building in your FileMaker Pro clients deploy out there are going to be translated through to WebDirect with almost no exceptions. Here is another question, and I'll throw this Andy's way, and I think it's a long one, but I think you'll be able to pick up the context, is if you make a single step in your button bar and copy the button bar to a variety of layouts, and if you change one of the buttons, doesn't that require that you change it on all the layouts, where as if you make a one-step script step change, then all button bars are changed. So before I let Andy elaborate on this, I'll just shortcut this and say that the navigation part of the navigation bars and put button bars on are not global. They are per the layout, but they're not global. Andy, would you like to elaborate any further on that?
Yeah, only to confirm that and say that that both the navigation part and the button bar object, they're local to a layout. They're scoped locally to a layout, just like every other control and every other part in FileMaker. So it really doesn't change the sort of fundamental way that we construct and build navigation in FileMaker applications, except that it allows you to compress a lot of moving parts into one simple object. And I have to say, in practice, having used it a little bit, it's pretty easy to replicate a single button bar across multiple layouts versus past behavior where you've got lots and lots of grouped objects that you're moving from place to place. So it helps speed things up quite a bit.
Thank you. Here's one. Does WebDirect support drag and drop of files into container fields? And the answer there is yes. Here is another question for Andy. Does the standby server have to be located on a local network?
So this is I think we'll probably struggle to get all of the data about standby server and how to set it up into this Q&A section, but there is a lot going on there, and I highly recommend that anyone take a look at the Getting Started guide. There's a handful of pages toward the end of it that describe the setup process. You will want to have the standby server nearby your server on a local network. There are some other limitations, for instance, or I should say constraints. For instance, the standby server must be a nearly identical machine to the primary server in the setup. And the number of things or the attributes that must be identical are elaborated on in that Get It Started guide, but it's things like the amount of RAM that's used, the OS version, and much, much more. So I won't try to read the entire list right now. But you want to have the exact same machine, essentially, or a very similar machine. And then once you set it up using the command line and you deploy that standby server, I would add that in the slide where today we talked about the notion of a failover option, where the standby server could step up if something happens with the primary server. But there's also a second option, which is called the switchover option. And the switchover option is the notion that using standby server can be a controlled event, where maybe you want to do some actions on the primary server, so you want to take it offline manually. So you have the option to switch over, which in the case of a switchover, since you haven't lost the first machine, you have the option of switching back again from your secondary server later. So anyway, it's a very powerful feature. There's a lot going on there, but it's fairly complex with the command line setup and the order of installation. So again, I'm going to defer folks to the Getting Started guide. Please take a look.
Thanks, Andy. Question here, does barcode scanning still work on FileMaker Go 14? And the answer is certainly it does. In fact, it's been enhanced so that you don't have to necessarily even write a script anymore. If you want to access that, you can tap into the field and scan into a field without having to first write a script. Here's another question that I'll throw over your way, Andy. Can FileMaker Server be hosted by a third-party ISP?
You can certainly have a third-party FileMaker hosting service deliver your access to the FileMaker platform. There are a variety of hosting providers that do that today and do it very, very well. I'll refer you to our website on that, and I think we've got them listed through the community section of our website. But we have many customers that are successfully using that today. So yes.
Thanks a lot. So we are right on the hour and we're out of time. So I would like to thank my colleague Andy Lecates, and I'd like to thank you for giving us your time to pay attention to the wonderful new features we've got in FileMaker 14. And with that, goodbye.
Thank you.